Well, can you believe it's September already as we say a fond farewell to summer and our vacations. We're gearing up for our season, which begins with our most popular concert of the year, our program at Brucemorchestra. When we're programming an event like Brucemorchestra, we're planning this almost a year and a half out in advance. And what I like to do is make sure that the program is classical in nature, but it also has crossover appeal so that it's interesting to both the novice and the sophisticate at the same time. Because what's better than coming to Brucemorchestra under the stars on a great lawn with a bottle of wine and a picnic and hearing some great music. One of our most requested pieces is Pines of Rome by Respighi. So we knew that we were going to perform that. We also knew that to avoid all home games of the Iowa Hawkeyes, we'd be choosing September 10th. Now, September 10th is the day before, right on the doorstep of the 10th anniversary of 9/11, so we knew that we had to pay homage to that occasion as well. So what do we perform? Well, in the second half, we already knew we were going to have this Roman theme, which is the reason why I paired it with music from Ben-Hur, the chariot race. And so, am I going to turn the whole concert into a toga party? Well, it might get a little cold for that in an Iowa September, but don't take that past me. But I thought, okay, what else are we going to do and how are we going to pay homage to the victims of 9/11? And that's how I started thinking about some English music, because one of the pieces that is often performed at memorials is a work, is a movement from Edward Elgar's Enigma Variations called Nimrod. And it's this very stirring, emotional, beautifully, incredibly emotionally charged music. Very appropriate for the occasion. And so that was the beginning of my thoughts about wedding the music of empire, the Roman Empire, with music from the English Empire. Having said that, I also knew a year and a half ago that this very summer there wasn't only going to be one, but two royal weddings. So I thought, I gave it my best shot. What music would they be performing at the royal wedding? And sure enough, I programmed most of the music that we all heard this summer. Pines of Rome is this incredibly large piece that requires extra brass, extra strings, extra percussion. Just visually, it's very stunning. It's a short work of around 25 minutes that's split into 4 movements. And each movement depicts the pines in the city of Rome in various locations. The first movement is at a palazzo, the Villa Borghese. And it depicts a lot of children running around, playing soldiers with each other, sticking their tongue out at each other, and what people will hear is music that sounds like nursery rhyme music, but also with all this incredible hustle and bustle, depicting this scene at this mansion. And then the second movement is the Pines of Rome at the catacombs. And so, of course, the music is much more somber and dark. And here's where the composer uses Gregorian chant to give that sort of austere flavor. But it's also very majestic and dark and very powerful. And then the third movement describes the pines on the hill of the Janiculum, which is where the Temple of Janus is. And it's this very sensual, very beautiful music. But this is what's so neat about it. This piece was written in 1924. And when you rent these parts, a CD comes with it of birdsong. So while you're in the audience, all of a sudden you're going to hear these bird songs twittering all over the place. It never fails to surprise and amuse people in the audiences. But what's so cool is that in the 1920s, when you ordered these parts and rented these parts, it came with an old LP that you had to put on. And then later, as technology developed, you'd get reel-to-reel and then a cassette or an 8-track. And now, well, we're in the 20th century, if not the 21st century, with a CD, and soon I'm sure you can download it. But so that's part of the extra musical effects that the composer was playing around with at the time. And then finally, the last movement is the most, arguably the most famous piece he's ever written, the Pines of the Appian Way, that depict a Roman army from the distance coming over, and then just in this grand finale, just showing the might of the Roman Empire. It's incredibly stirring music. I knew that the second half of this program was going to be Roman in nature. And so when I was growing up, I was a trumpet player, a bad one at that, but one of my favorite pieces to play when I was in band was Parade of the Charioteers from Ben-Hur. And so when I got this opportunity to program the Pines of Rome, and I knew I needed this Roman flavored piece, I jumped at the chance to program some film music from Ben-Hur, the Parade of the Charioteers, which again is this incredibly large and majestic and pompous and imperial piece. For all of those of you who graduated and those of you who wish you could have graduated, you will recognize this piece. There are certain pieces in the repertoire that are so pervasive that everybody will recognize when they hear it. That's the whole point of Brucemorch, is to program these works that I call aha music. When you hear it, you go, aha, that's the piece. And of course, this is the piece that is often performed at processionals at graduation. And when Edward Elgar originally wrote this, he wrote it as a coronation, pomp and circumstance for kings and queens and the like. And so the first half of this program, to complement the second half of the Roman Empire, is music of the British Empire, and nothing is more English and royal than the music of Elgar. Crown Imperial is a coronation march that was modeled after the marches of Edward Elgar. It's basically pomp and circumstance, but on steroids, if you will. And the occasion for which it was written was for the coronation of King George VI, made famous by Colin Firth in his Academy Award performance in The King's Speech. England has a very odd history when it comes to its composers. In the Renaissance, it had a very fertile life with composers like William Byrd and Thomas Tallis, and even into the Baroque with Henry Purcell. And then all of a sudden, it all dried up, and there were no composers of note for centuries until the late Romantic period. And it was people like Edward Elgar and Hubert Parry who actually started writing in a sense that created an English sound. And Hubert Parry arguably has written the two pieces that most stir the English soul. He would probably be more of a household name if he wasn't so multi-talented, because he spent much of his life not only as a composer but as a scholar as well, and didn't have the output nearly as much as his contemporary Edward Elgar. But the two pieces that he wrote, I Was Glad and Jerusalem, are the most performed, arguably the most performed works in England. The first, I Was Glad, is a coronation anthem that is sung at every coronation of every monarch since it was composed. And Jerusalem is sort of the unofficial national anthem, somewhat like America the Beautiful is to America. When you go to an event like Brucemorch, the last thing you're looking at is logistics. If everything operates smoothly, you don't notice a thing. But there are a myriad of details that have to be planned 6 months, even to a year in advance, whether it's something as mundane as how many porta potties do you need on site. How are you going to control the exits and entrances, the ticketing, the marketing? The stage itself has to be large enough to involve a chorus and an orchestra, and the stage has to include a canopy as well as lighting, as well as sound. These are but the very surface nature of this entire event, because when an audience comes to a program or to a concert, they're seeing the final sliver of a long journey of planning and logistics that started, well, in this case, at least a year ago.